Welcome back to the Urban Renewal session. A set of 5 presentations is ahead and a variety of issues, different issues we are going to touch. And we start with the presentation co-authored by Katarzyna Sadowy and Dominika Brodowicz. I'm happy to introduce Dominika Brodowicz, who is going to present the presentation. Hello, Dominika.
Good afternoon.
Dr. Dominika Brodowicz is an assistant professor at the Innovative City Department at the Warsaw School of Economics, and she specializes in interdisciplinary research on the development of the cities. I'm really glad that this kind of specialist is enriching our discussion, and Dominika is going to present a paper, a presentation titled Post-Industrial or Future-Oriented, Adaptive Reuse of Small-Scale Productions Heritage in Praga District in Warsaw. Dominika, the screen is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dominika Brodowicz. I was already introduced, so I will not repeat myself. I will be talking today about Praga district and also about the bakery, piekarnia in Polish. This is one of the tasks and one of the basically objectives that we have in Praga Lab. And what is Praga Lab? Let me just go farther and click. Oh, just too many clicks. Just bear with me for a second. Maybe I'm doing this too fast, but I just saw that I switched over to. Thank you very much. Yes, perfect. So I'm a team member of Praga Lab. We consist of researchers and also activists and I would say professionals in the field of heritage, property management, and what you would call innovative cities approach and how they can basically develop in the future. As a Praga Lab, we are part of the Open Heritage Project, which is Horizon 2020 project. Together with us, there are 16 partners from 11 different countries all around Europe. So there's first of all, plenty of us, but then we also have a huge field to cover. For us, as a part of the lab, I'm just going to switch to another one. Fingers crossed, I'm just doing this too fast, I think. So if we have technical support, maybe my touchpad probably is to, yes, thank you very much. I'll be just nodding my head. I know that there's this beautiful green button and red one to use, but probably my touchpad is too sensitive. So, yeah. Thank you very much. Yes, I just got a hint what to do instead of touchpad. So let me just explain you. We are part of 6 cooperative heritage labs, which are across Europe. The one in Warsaw, also representing Poland, focuses on Praga district, but we also have a lab in Rome, in Italy, one in Lisbon in Portugal, one in Sutherland, which represents United Kingdom, Pomas, which is a site close to Budapest in Hungary, and one in Germany, Pradikov, very close to Berlin. To explain at the beginning, we are very different labs. So each of us, even though we tackle the issue of heritage reuse, and also we are looking at tangible and intangible heritage, we have different tasks to cover and also different problems. But that makes us even greater. And when we basically discuss the issues and compare the results, it gives us a much broader spectrum of ideas what actually is going on in Europe at the moment with heritage and its reuse. We focus on Praga district. It came up from different reasons, even though we represent the branch of Polish architects, Warsaw branch, and also Warsaw School of Economics. We decided to focus on Praga district. This is a very specific district for Warsaw. First of all, it's the only one which is basically authentic for the city. The part that it wasn't actually destroyed during the Second World War. But also it's very specific for the community of hardworking people, the blue-collar people, who are also active till today in the district. And what is Praga today? This is a very specific place. On one hand, it was neglected for many years, where investments and basically many main actors of the city and also of foreigners were very skeptic about its development and also what was going on over there. But then with structural changes, political changes, and also with new connections, especially the subway, the card just flipped. The huge regeneration projects, which started with programming, with EU programming from 2014, and also, the period that was just the preparation period, and also investments of large companies are changing basically the face of the district. And then on the one side we have this beautiful and new ideas which come from the revitalization of the Praga district. Very strong community, which is very specific for this area. You will not find as many activists, but also local neighbors who are interested in their neighborhood, like in Praga. Also, it's very authentic, as I told you. It wasn't destroyed, so there is this property, the building stock, that needs to be first of all protected. But then we are not thinking about this place as a museum or skansen or the closed site only for tourists. And then we have new connections of the subway. On the other hand, there are huge projects, including Google Campus or in housing investments like Koneser and also Bohema, which are changing the district into direction of gentrification. Basically, the prices are going up, and the inhabitants who were there before are struggling with many economic problems at the moment. Not mentioning the over touristification, and in a bad way, because there are many groups just coming in and interested in the site, but looking at the ugly side of Praga district, which is a very bad communication and a very bad image, and also this growing social inequality. So in the middle of this, I'm just gonna use my arrows. In the middle of this, we have a bakery building. It wasn't given to us as a Praga Lab as a task. We just came across. I would say that even bakery came to us as a task. We were actually browsing properties across Praga when we saw this beautiful bakery. Quickly we find out that the task to be a tenant of such a place, it's too huge for Praga Lab itself, for our team, and also too expensive. But then we came up with the idea to create a task force, to create teams who could, with us, start the journey and think about properties which are actually in Praga, very similar to those. One of our groups gave us some statistics, and until 1990s, there was around 20 large manufacturing sites, and also 50 similar to the bakery. Similar sites. So it gave us an idea that when we will start with bakery, maybe something else will come up. Maybe it could be used as a benchmark for others, and also I'm just hope that everyone can hear me, because I see that something is frozen, but it's okay. We can use it basically as a benchmark and start a larger debate what could be done with heritage sites, and not to close them basically as museums, or change their character for forever. And I think we do. Am I still? Hello? Something just froze. I'm getting hints that is everything okay, because I'm still struggling with changing the slides. So if everything is okay, just yep, yeah, everything. Just something. I even changed the computer to make it work. Okay, so let's just work on the papers I have. So looking at the bakery, we thought about creating this teams, or I would say even a task force, which would include the teams who are looking at specific solutions for the bakery, but we also thought about a municipality and basically decision makers who should be involved in such a process to make actual changes on site. So we had an open call in 2019, and out of the open call, we started cooperation with two teams. One was called Architecci, and the second one was called Zaczen. All of the teams included specialists in economy. There were also architects, but we also thought about specialists from the social fields, who were more involved in actual work on the ground with local community. And out of this work, we came out with solutions for the bakery. I'm just going to switch to my own presentation. And we thought about circular. We thought about circular solutions for the bakery, and we divided the tasks into three areas. First of all, what can be done with the physical side? So the building shouldn't be changed itself, but what about the function in the building? Should it be always a bakery? It could be also another production site. The modern work, it doesn't mean that we have to repeat the patterns from the past. But then thinking about such a process, we cannot neglect the current issues and current challenges which are happening in the cities. Most of them are connected to environmental challenges, struggles, and also to circular economy. When we work with our teams, we ask them what could be done to create spaces similar, let's say, to makerspace or open workshops, where individuals or small-scale micro entrepreneurs could enter such a site as bakery. So we won't create a huge barrier for international investors don't have in terms of Conessor or Google campus, because in Praga district it was always its strength to invest and to help and to support small-scale entrepreneurs. And out of this project, we came with two solutions for the bakery. One was non-for-profit, and the second one was based on the ideas to create a kind of a company or a cooperation, not only for profit. We always knew that the places like bakery will not function only for social reasons. We need strong entrepreneurs who would be able to, firstly, to work over there, and also to create over there, but to make a profit, which is very, very important. But not forgetting about the social side of the project. Also thinking about opening the bakery for others, and making make it a space for a community, not to create another place which is simply which simply has an image of gentrification, so high prices, new clients, and cutting off the local community out of it. And with the bakery, we do realize that it's only an intellectual journey for now. With another stage of our work, we are actually thinking what could be done on ground and with local authorities to open the bakery for those who would be willing to create over there, who would be willing to work over there. But first of all, it's a long journey because of the legal claims for the bakery. Many of the properties similar to bakery, but not only in Warsaw, have this problem or even a stigma of Bierut Decree from 1945, which means that still the legal owners before pre-Second World War have the rights to claim the site or ask for remuneration. So this is one problem. Another one is that this type of properties are left for many, many years without renovations. So whoever comes in needs to make a significant investment in such a project. And this is basically the problem for small scale investors to be over there. I'm not seeing my clock anymore, but I think I exceeded the time. What I want to say, finishing up my short presentation, that we just finished our report in English about the bakery. It will be available on our website, and also the website is on my last slide, but my screen just froze a couple of minutes ago. The report will be available on our website early next week. So everyone interested, please go to our website, download it, or contact me by email. I'm also staying for questions and answers sessions, so I'll be glad to participate in discussion. What I wanted to ask everyone participating right now in this session is if there's anyone or groups who are working on similar projects or have came across similar solutions in Europe, please contact us. We'll be very glad to discuss with you and share our experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dominika, very much for your message from the inside, because you are not only a researcher, but also an activist, and you represent the group who is trying to do something, not only to research, to give us a report or to measure, to evaluate, but also to manage in a real life with a monument and its past and its future. So thanks a lot, and we are keeping the subject of reuse. And I'm happy to welcome Tomáš Winkler from Slovakia. Hello, Tomáš. Dr. Tomáš Winkler is a research fellow at the Institute of Ethnology and Social Anthropology of the Slovak Academy of Sciences, as he's going to present us the presentation Adaptive Reuse and Revitalization of Industrial Heritage for Cultural Purposes in Slovakia, the case study of Cvernovka, Nova Cvernovka in Bratislava. One remark before I give the screen to Tomáš. He's not able to stay with us until the very end of the session, until the question and answer part. So if you feel like to ask a question for Tomáš, just type it in our chat, and after the presentation, I will ask this question. And now it's time for Tomáš. Please, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. So, dear participants, dear audience, as you heard, my presentation will be about adaptive reuse and revitalization of industrial heritage for cultural purposes in Slovakia, on the example of Cvernovka in Bratislava. Processes of revitalization, regeneration, and conversion of industrial heritage are perceived today as a new trend, in particular for the purposes of cultural, creative, and artistic activities. We can also observe it in Slovakia in the form of cultural and community centers and bottom-up initiatives. However, state policies of cultural heritage protection and creative industries support in our country do not fully reflect this trend yet. As a result, dominance of private interests leads to the endangerment of industrial heritage and local culture. The aim of my presentation will be to illustrate these processes and to formulate recommendations on the example of Cvernovka, which is a former thread and textile factory in Bratislava. Now, what is the industrial heritage? It consists of sites, structures, complexes, areas, and landscapes, as well as the related machinery, objects, or documents that provide evidence of past or ongoing industrial processes of production, the extraction of raw materials, their transformation into goods, and the related energy and transport infrastructures. Adaptive reuse is the act of finding a new use for a building. It is a process by which structurally sound older buildings are developed for a new uses or to the new context. The recycling of buildings has long been an important and effective historic preservation tool. It initially developed as a method of protecting historically significant buildings from demolition. The importance of industrial heritage in synergy with the socio-cultural capital of the creative sector can be a positive model of the management of heritage. Revitalization, regeneration, adaptation, and conversion of buildings by artists is one of the oldest means of reusing industrial places, and the creative sector is often among those who first recognize the value of industrial heritage. It is frequently used as an environment for small and medium-sized companies and entrepreneurs in the fields of cultural industries and knowledge economy in the forms of art incubators, creative clusters, and co-working spaces. Creative and civil sector are a source of innovations through discovering new ways of using old sites, but also through pointing to the problems, spreading information, and drawing attention to the site and its potentials, protecting the heritage from demolition and dominantly commercial interests. The traditional instruments in urban planning and heritage protection are increasingly powerless in dealing with the new challenges worldwide. State protection is declared due to the values recognized and evaluated by professionals, which can cause alienation from people, everyday life, and the environment that is supposed to preserve and present the industrial heritage. Valuation does not stop with elitist valuation of architecture, artistic, and historical values, but rather tends to expand it to other symbolic and social values, for example, those originating from an interaction between cultural heritage and population. Valuation is a rather complex procedure that requires a broader viewpoint, and it must be conducted in an interdisciplinary manner. In such context, a significant role is played by initiatives undertaken by non-institutional actors, such as the civil and creative sector. Heritage and memory related to historical surroundings are recognized as being important also for local community due to several factors. They influence the perception of the space and the creation of personal and place identity. As a result, people define themselves through the places where they live. Improving the local identity and attractiveness of certain places is closely related with revitalization of urban spaces. The role of industrial heritage in identity building relies on its social and cultural values as a place of meeting, communication, information transfer, participation or interaction, as well as the public arena for cultural events, manifestations, and other music or art-related happenings. In recent European policies of cultural and urban development, the traditional concept of urban regeneration based on cultural heritage is increasingly replaced by the cultural brownfield concept. This concept is used to describe processes of cultural revival of unused and abandoned spaces while creating a vibrant and innovative cultural and artistic life. Now, what is the situation in Central and Eastern Europe? With the fall of the Iron Curtain and the arrival of market capitalism, many of the social and political values commonly inscribed in buildings suddenly became obsolete, leaving behind abandoned architectural structures. The concept of revitalizing industrial zones and buildings in the post-socialist Europe was lacking any of the social historical interests it often had in Western contexts. The interest in the cultural reuse of industrial buildings arrived to Central and Eastern Europe through the examples of Western conversions. In the late 19th, many Central and Eastern European cities rediscovered their forgotten industrial areas in the new economic context and frequently connected it with the local cultural scene. In the meantime, in most urban regeneration processes in Central and Eastern Europe, due to the specificities of both the democratic transition and the privatization process, the art-driven phase of revitalization has often been skipped, and the real estate market became the major player. So, knowing the fashion and trends along which Western inner cities have regained their appeal, cut short the regular cycles of urban development. It is therefore possible that in many Central and Eastern European cities, interest in the industrial buildings stock arose earlier from the side of investors than from the side of independent grassroots cultural and social initiatives. So when the non-profit and the cultural spheres discovered the potential of industrial areas, most of them had been already sold out. A good illustration of this situation and these processes is Cvernovka in Bratislava. Cvernovka, a former thread factory, was built at the end of 19th century. The start of production dates back to 1902. At that time, Cvernovka had approximately 640 employees. While in the 60s, the factory reached its peak of production with 2,500 employees, 30 years later, it gradually collapsed when it was cut off from steam supplies. The economic transformation in the 90s led to the stopping of production. The gradually degrading space became the property of several investors, but none of them was able to revitalize it. In 2006, the owner of this factory offered this complex for a rent for relatively low prices, which naturally attracted artists, creative people, and activists. It became an important and popular point in the cultural map of Bratislava, characterized by informality and alternative bottom-up approaches. But the presence of artists in the former factory was only temporary. Now, temporary use by local community, young creative people and activists is a common model of industrial heritage regeneration. Spontaneous occupation of a space is important in the early phase of revitalization, possibly later leading to a more economically viable forms of use through supporting and initiating the development of other activities. Informal activities that take place in abandoned industrial buildings can influence the change in the negative perception of a place over time and point out the potentials of derelict sites. Unlike the owners who, in the absence of a plan, restrain from intervening and investing to buildings, the representatives of the creative and civil sector accept temporary use and invest in the space even when long-term uses and the future are uncertain. This was also the case of Cvernovka. But in June 2012, the owner of Cvernovka terminated the contracts of several tenants and then illegally demolished some of the buildings of the complex. Now, how this could have happened? The discussion on the protection of industrial heritage in Slovakia did not begin until 2008. So when authorities in this year, authorities began a more comprehensive mapping and analysis of the values of industrial buildings, but decades after other countries. Another problem was the non-existent concept of monument heritage protection, which the Ministry of Culture did not adopt until 2011. It identified the problem of high administrative burden, low emphasis on research, and creation of conceptual documents, and the absence of several experts such as urban planners. This weak debate on the values of the industrial heritage and the late solution resulted in the declaration of only one Cvernovka building as a national cultural monument in 2008, the main object called Praďareň. In 2015, it became clear that this community has to leave these buildings because of the planned construction of a new residential and office zone called Cvirn. This community became more organized and, with the help of Bratislava self-government region, moved in 2016 to a new place, a former school building, where they functioning today under the name of Nová Cvernovka, New Cvernovka. We can find here approximately 80 studios and ateliers rented by artists, designers, startups, activists, and civil society organizations. This Nová Cvernovka was several times involved in protests and campaigns, and activism is here present also at the level of cultural program, which frequently reflects subjects as politics, education, urban development, and environmental activism. So finally, the story of Cvernovka turned out relatively positively. The creative community survived, and at least the most valuable protected part of the complex was sensitively reconstructed with an emphasis on the architectural quality of the building. On the other hand, in Bratislava, several industrial complexes have been demolished in the last 20 years. Some of them were demolished illegally and were in the process of declaring them as a national cultural monument, as it was in the case of Kablo, a former cable factory, and the chemical factory called Gumon. Now, what are the problems and obstacles of the transformation of industrial areas into living places of culture in Slovakia? Industrial heritage buildings have been recognized in the official public policy only in the last few years, and there is no systematic approach and cooperation in the identification, protection, and activation of them. The capacity of institutions in terms of protection and activation is further affected by unresolved ownership issues, lack of information about the buildings, and complicated bureaucracy. The inherited planning and the heritage protection model is based on a rational planning paradigm, focusing on physical planning and the hierarchy of plans, resulting with rigidity and complicated adoption procedure, while temporary uses are not recognized and supported. Also, opposing interests between actors, for example, between developers and authorities, between developers and the civil sector, and the lack of collaboration is a next problem. The creative sector and bottom-up initiatives often fail to turn ideas into practice and to become recognized by formal institutions. The dominance of profit-gaining politics leads to a disturbance in the balance between public and private interests and to exclusion. The development of projects that the local community needs most is often neglected, and new uses proposed by developers can be completely irrelevant to the interests of citizens. Consequences of the dominance of private over public places are increasingly corporate-owned cities with monotonous developments denying engagement with local people, promoting exclusivity and consumption, and in such a system, local culture and heritage are neglected and endangered. Also, working with protected buildings is perceived as an inconvenience, and they are often not interested in its preservation and reuse. And also, the next problem is that public involvement is at low level, so the urban planning system has a top-down approach, leaving a place for the involvement of citizens only in the later stage of the development. At the end of my presentation, I make a few conclusions and recommendations to improve this situation. It's important to develop institutions and mechanisms for vertical and horizontal coordination and to establish links and partnerships between different institutions and sectors. Also, there is a need for a change for traditional planning models towards a strategic, long-term model which would leave room for unexpected changes such as temporary use and the greater involvement of non-institutional and non-investor initiatives in the production of a place. It's connected with the importance of bottom-up approaches for the activation, which can reduce conflicts among the actors and contribute to the process of activating other abandoned industrial buildings. Valuable industrial buildings should get the status of cultural monument immediately after the production has stopped in order to prevent their destruction and demolition. And finally, it is necessary to keep in mind the social aspect of urban regeneration. More community-sensible, locally based projects can, through the gradual improvement of public spaces and services, be more sustainable and as a long-term option than big urban regeneration projects. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Tomáš. As you mentioned, reuse and revitalization was inspired by the Western examples. Let's check how it is there. And let's go to Amsterdam, because the third presentation will be devoted to Amsterdam. And let me present Fariba Mirmohammad Sadeghi, who is joining us from Charles University in Prague. And Fariba is architectural by training, taught at Tehran University in Iran. And she was working at Sama and Semnan universities. She teach them different architectural subjects, but now it's based in Charles University. And her presentation is entitled Participatory Approaches and Urban Development, a Case Study of Amsterdam. Fariba, the screen is yours.
Thank you for your introduction, and thank you for this session and this opportunity to be with the Heritage Forum. My presentation is about participatory approaches in Amsterdam, and I want to see, in case of Amsterdam, which has a long history of participation in decision-making and governance and democracy, how they deal with their future developments and what is the role of the public there. And I want to specify the activities of a special institution, the Architecture Center for Amsterdam, called ARCAM in this case. So why Amsterdam? Because of many reasons. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The hydraulic system of the canals is very articulated and amazing. It has a typical urban life, sexual freedom, drug tolerance, and with its huge number of immigrants, which include about half of its 800,000 population. It's a great example of tolerance and inclusion. One of the reasons that we consider Amsterdam as a masterpiece of urban planning is the publication of a book at the late 18th century, which showed the screenscapes of Amsterdam, and also the result of current day situation of Amsterdam and its central canal ring is the efforts of that day designers and planners and their reluctance to follow the example of London, Paris, and some other European capitals. If we see the development of Amsterdam, we see it has three phases. From 13th to 17th century, which was the golden age of Amsterdam and its economic flourish. The beginning of the 20th century, the Plansuit and the Housing Act, and after the Second World War and the General Extension Plan. The current form of the districts and neighborhoods of Amsterdam is a direct result of Plansuit and Amsterdam School, which happened at the first half of the 20th century. And now, what's the role of institutional regulations here? And what's the future of Amsterdam? Because whenever we talk about heritage and culture, we talk about maintaining them, we talk about keeping them, but we don't talk about their future. And always the problem of development and urban growth exists for cities, especially for the cities that have historical background. Amsterdam is going to have a rapid growth in population, about 11,000 additional inhabitants coming to it each year. And according to its housing development plan, it's going to have about 52,000 new homes built by 2025. Which includes self-built housing, social housing, medium-priced rental houses, and homes for the young people, students, and the elderly. And the space needed for these houses is created by demolishing existing buildings and adaptive reuse, and also in filling the gaps. Here we see the structural vision of 2040, and also something called Manifesto of the Schengen, which is a program aimed for creating greenery and biodiversity around Amsterdam. And it's initiated by ARCAM. The Dutch government has a new Environment and Planning Act, which is the connection good? Because I think the slides are a little bit flu. I wonder if everyone's seeing them well. And anyway, the New Dutch Planning Act is the combination of 26 existing acts. It aims for easier building, easier management of projects, and it was going to happen and begin in January 2021. But due to the pandemic, it's delayed until July 2022. In the city level, the municipality of Amsterdam has involving the public participation of residents according to its rules, and according to the new act, it has to involve the people and gain public participation in all of its projects, and it would be mandatory. Right now, there is a poll made by the municipality for gathering proposals for the public participation framework policy. And they are implementing the participation of people through their current council, which is in office from 2000. The current term is 2018 to 2022, and they have a coalition agreement called New Song and New Sound, and they are having this participation in two ways. They're posting news and information of the projects on their website, on which every project has a different page, and the plans, the documents of each project are available to the public, and the public can study them and vote about them or send a comment about that project through the website or through a mobile app, which is used in some districts. I'm not sure if it's used in all of the districts. And another way of public for participating in these development plans is the deciding of their own neighborhood and voting for the projects that are going to happen for their neighborhood. And it's called area-oriented work, and like the council term, it's 4-year programs that is decided by the public and stakeholders through the direct participation of people. They decide, for example, what their neighborhood needs: a new park or a new playground, what would happen for the education, for the students, for the market. And there are 6 goals for each area plan, and they are created as 4-year programs, and they are revised each year to see if the goals are achieved or not. But in this case, that the people are participating, some studies show that not all of the people participate in the projects. For example, mostly the middle-aged male men are present in the in most of the participatory approaches. And excuse me. Sorry. And there are also some studies that show not always participation is acceptable by the government, because the government or the officials feel that the participants' requests are unachievable, or the participation isn't democratic, because not all of the social classes participate and show their opinion. So I think according to historic urban landscape and the goal, which is to create sustainability and livable alive city, and for the people to better participate in the future decisions of their city, they need to be informed of the projects of architecture or urban development. They need to find knowledge and awareness to be eager to attend in the projects and feel motivated to be present in these approaches, because if they don't approach, their comment and their ideas won't be seen and won't be considered. And considering that governance is a new improvement of government and we need public participation, it's really important to include the people in the decisions about the city. So my question is, how does ARCAM involves the community in urban development of Amsterdam and helps the participation happen? ARCAM is the architecture center of Amsterdam, and it's similar to some other institutions like KEK, which is the Hungarian Contemporary Architecture Center in Budapest, or CAMP, which is the Center for Architecture and Metropolitan Planning, which is located in Prague. ARCAM has a large area of activities. It has many sponsors, and it tries to reach the public and the experts through various programs and putting up workshops, publishing many books, and creating tours, opportunities of volunteering and internship. And also its building is a landmark, and their mission is to create diversity, inclusiveness, and nature inclusiveness. And they are trying to do their mission in 3 scopes: explore, visit, and discover, which is through creating expert-oriented tips and talks, creating exhibitions, for example, like Timeline Amsterdam 2000-2030 Expo Lab, and introducing architectural contests and masterpieces, and creating an opportunity for discovering, for the being introduced with different methods or different approaches related to architectural design and urban design in different stages. And their website has many examples and previous works of the interviews with architects, and all their workshops, and like online now because of the COVID, many panels and seminars that can be submitted by the interested people and attend. And also Arkham provides tours to visit different parts of Amsterdam. And my research is an ongoing research. Most of it is done by desk research until now, and it needs field work and interviews which need to be present at Amsterdam. And I'm going to do the rest of it when I can travel to Amsterdam. So it's still needs work to do. But my hypothesis is that in Amsterdam, Arkham can reach the community through its projects. But I wonder how successful is this type of programs, and how people are included in these types of programs, and how many of the residents are really interested in these types of projects and how they attend. And also future possible research would be the inclusion factor of the Arkham activities, and the way that all of the society is represented in the target society. And thank you everyone for your attention, and I would be waiting for questions. Thank you.
Also a good example of participation, of democratic way of shaping the city or shaping the space. Thank you also for putting the role of the architect as a link, as a tie between the community and the government or the authorities. This is really important role, and we are really curious about your future research, to what extent they fulfill their role, how successful are they in Akram, in the architects organized there in the mission. And now let's get back to Kraków. Let me introduce Dr. Anna Staniewska. Again, I'm very happy to have a landscape architect among us. Anna Staniewska is a researcher and lecturer of the Department for Landscape Architecture at the Krakow University of Technology at the Faculty of Architecture, and is going to present her research, Challenges of Sustainable Development of Historic Psychiatric Hospital Landscapes. Anna, welcome. I'm so sorry. I've just received a message that we lost the connection with Anna Staniewska. So let me introduce instead Maciej Żołnierczuk, again a landscape architect. Hello, Maciej.
Hello.
As I said, I'm really happy that we have so many landscape architects in our community. This is really important for us. And let me greet the institution which is very close to us. We are really good friends with the Museum of King John III Palace at Wilanów. At this very time, we have a common exhibition of plants and animals in Wilanów.
Exactly.
Yes. So I am very happy that along with the exhibition, we have also this connection during the forum. And Maciej, as a landscape architect, will present the importance of the Museum of King Jan III Palace at Wilanów in the sustainable development of the district. Example of activities. Really, the museum is very active, and we really appreciate your innovative ways of acting with the community of Wilanów, the district of Warsaw. So, Maciej, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much for the introductions. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for that you stay with me for this presentation, because I know that it's already afternoon and many people are coming back to home now. For me, it's a great honor to be able to present the topic of the importance of the museum in the context of the landscape changes. Okay. So, Museum of King John for is a royal summer residence with tradition. The king chose this place due to the unique values of the landscape. From the west, the area is limited by the Warsaw escarpment. From the east, we have got a Vistula River. The palace itself is located on overflow terrace close to the Wilanów Lake, which is a Vistula Oxbow lake. The garden complex has also surroundings are covered by numerous forms of monuments and natural protection. For example, we have got the natural reserve, we have got Wilanów Cultural Park. We have got also a monument, historical monument. But if you think that sufficient protection is it's enough for us, and this sufficient protection is good, I think you are wrong, because we have got lots of problem with to protect, to save our landscape. Let's see what has happened in just 16 years. The space around the park has been transformed. Much of the meadows that retain the water have been built up. Right now, it is a new house estate, and this process hasn't started, but it's closer to the museum. The level of the urbanization is so high that at the present on the district we have got only 2 green big areas for the residents. It's our park and the park in the Natoli, which is considered for the visitors for most of the year. As you can see on the slide, on the central point of the slide, it's a map with the temperature from the center, and I marked there 2 points. Of course, these are those 2 marks, and probably as you see and as you know, the only oasis of coolness for the residents at warm day at district. The museum tried to identify the landscape components. Of course, we know that we have got the we have the park, the lake, of course, but we also have got very close to us farmlands, the alley near the farmlands, and the forest, which is a national reserve. But it's not we are not to identify components, but we are trying to find the connections with between them, and that's how we are trying to work and think about land. Okay, so probably to know what we are at our museum. So maybe we could start from the international cooperation. Thanks to the effort of Director Dorota Folga-Januszewska, in 2016, ICOM paid a resolution dealing with the responsibility of the museums towards landscape. As landscape is not the space, it's also a big narrative potential, and if you want to feel the residence, you should also feel the landscape where this residence is located. Museum shouldn't be only a build something more, it should be a maintain of a local identity. We also try to cooperate with the various organizations. We participate in programs. These are only a few examples of our cooperation. With the programs, we are trying to those programs give us a chance, revitalization, the space, and able us to gain a new experience. Right now, I want to go back to local problems. A good example of the difficulties that we face is the concept from the last year. As I said at the second slide, I think part of our area is a natural reserve that we call Mission. There are some kind of historical ruins of the buildings that were built almost 200 years ago. Mistakes made in the spatial planning result in the idea to build a high pressure gas pipeline supporting gas to the big power station under this nature reserve. Of course, we're trying to talk with the engineers, but very often we heard that the machine have got only 4 values, and that's all what's over there. In our opinion, as a guardian of the identity of the space, we have got much of here you can see the map of this pipeline, which is crossing the Mauritian. Okay. In our opinion, there's much more values. On the right side there, you can see examples of this. And we have got the ruins of Hollander homestead, Kulum, layout of tracks, tree polders, potential new monuments, harbor at the canal. So which, as you can see, there is more values of these areas. So right now we are trying to make decisions, the decisions makers aware of this idea. Probably you would like to know also usually at our museum. Most of all, we use a GISM in a large area. On this slide, you can see the F1 of our analyses, during which we were looking for the traces of the old water system in the exactly Mauritian Park, the nature reserve. We were trying this element because it could be an element of the protection of this ecosystem, the biodiversity, and this area, because right now the Vistula River is not coming so close to the palace. This area is much more drier than it was about 50 years. So this forest needs a lot of water to stay for a long time. Last year was difficult for everyone. We heard it at a few presentations, and at our museum we were wondering what we could prepare, for example, for the students. How can we help them to in this strange time? We created an educational dendrological path. It was made by our own thoughts. As you can see, it is some kind of simple application where you can find the picture of the ants and the text. The text. This application emerged during the Landscape Day at last year. What's important is that the text was divided to two parts. The green one is for the tourists that don't have much time. They want to know something by it. They would, but the white text is very exactly for students, for example, from technical schools who are preparing for exams, because there's of typical information, typical for the gardeners, information could use in practice at their work. Our biggest problem is the water. As you can see on this view, we have got lots of types of the problem with the water. I have to say the water that is coming to our lake with stream, Służewiecki stream, whose catchment area covers 10% of Warsaw. So you can imagine areas. And this process it has got a high level of, especially during heavy rainfall. As you can see at those photos, the streams sometimes is like a rainbow. It has got a green color, red color, so many colors really of this. Sometimes it has a foam. A few times per year, we have got also a flood at our park and buildings. We were wondering what to do with this problem. And we are trying to minimize risk of and make some analysis to see what is our area. That's why we installed our own water and air monitoring system. We analyze, for example, water level, also not only in the stream, also checking the properties such as temperature, salinity, pH. At the future, we are planning to analyze our connections between properties of air that is outside and inside. Part of the cooperation with the Warsaw Municipal Grant Space Authority, We made a project of rebuild the banks of the stream to protect them from erosion. Of course, at the left side you can see the past, and on the right side you can see the situation from the present. To the work of city planners, we have prepared our own project of a special development plan. We also submit comments to similar documents that concern the area around the museum. Importantly, most of our conclusions are considered as correct. So I think we made a lot of good job at our museum. We will prepare some proposals for applications of environmental programs for Warsaw, because we are trying to look not only to our but also to the area which are somehow connected with us. Okay, however, I can't say everything. On this picture, you can see the main view and composition X. It's connecting our palace with some which is on the top of Warsaw escarpment. So there is a big change ground level. During the building the estate, the X was broken and now it's not a straight line. What is important that according to Slovakia plan, there was an idea to build a building on the, and it was possible because and the special local development, there was a text that of course you can build the building, but you make the some kind of view opening. It should have a form of the gate. So if you want how it looks like, it's this building, and in my opinion, this gate is quite big. It's not quite big as it should be. I can even say that like a gate for a mouse, not for the view connection. Another that you see on this picture is a green. There is a space where royal appeared. We had to make some that will refer to the history and the tradition of this place. For example, it could be a flower meadows that are good element for these. Unfortunately, Mayor decided to plant the apple trees. If you want to see how it looks like, you will see it on this. Okay, so please pay attention to the distance between the large lime tree and apple trees. Probably these fruit trees will leave this place very soon because it's not possible to live under such a big tree as a lime tree. And at this slide, you can see also the blue frame. The blue frame, there is a place of the historical canal. Right now, we have got canal, but unfortunately, this is a canal without the water. So next problem that we have at the new place. For correlation, I will talk. Oh, sorry. I will tell you about the red frame. As you can see, the X has a fragmentation in this area. At the beginning of the planners wanted to break this red for two parts, just like those two frames. But first to our action, there is a provision to in the local special development plan regarding the joint development of those two frames. So I think it is much better that divided into two parts. At the end, I would like to tell you a little bit about the program of my friend Cvernovka. She prepared a social archive of our museum. Everyone can send material connected with our palace and park. Right now at the archive, we have over 200 photos from family albums. She also organized the edition meetings to learn everyone how to prepare such an archive. Nowadays, we can say that this program can give us a lot of information about the landscape. For example, in this program, we could find old names of the area, at the park, and not only. Okay, so there were only a few examples of our activities if you were interested in them. So thank you very much for your attention. I encourage you to cooperate with our museum. Thank you very much.
Much, Maciej, for your presentation. Please stay with us till the end of today's session. And now I'm happy to regain the connection with Dr. Anna Staniewska. So hello Anna, let me repeat once again.
Hello.
Anna is a landscape architect as well, researcher and lecturer of the Department for Landscape Architecture at the Faculty of Architecture of the Krakow University of Technology, and her presentation is entitled Challenges of Sustainable Development of Historic Psychiatric Hospital Landscapes. Anna, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much for this thorough introduction. I'm very happy to be here. Good afternoon, everybody. For me, a Heritage Forum is always a highly intellectual pleasure to take part in this multitude of presentations and wonderful examples of heritage and development issues. And why I'm talking about psychiatric hospital landscapes. Well, I'm not talking about psychiatric hospital heritage, but about the landscapes, because contemporary issues are very important as well as historic ones. And I treat landscapes as a representation of spaces where buildings, the architecture, interplays with natural features of the site and with the cultural reflection of the garden history. I'm going to talk about the value of the whole ensemble. I'm not going to present the whole history of the psychiatry, because it's although it's very interesting, it would be far too long and it would exceed the time of my presentation. But I want to first mention that psychiatry as a separate medical specialization in modern terms was born at the turn of the 18th and 19th century, although doctors were familiar with many mental health issues from the ancient times, but at the turn of the 18th and 19th century, there was a significant change in medicine, which resulted in forming psychiatry as a separate specialization. And one of the oldest institutions in Europe, mental health institutions in Europe, is considered to be Bedlam, so-called Bethlehem Hospital in London, which was famous, but it was famous in that bad sense of that word, for its cruel treatment of ill people. And the change which happened at the turn of the 18th and 19th century was associated with not only the French doctor Pinel, who liberated his psychiatric patients from the chains, but also with the private care institutions, which introduced the so-called moral treatment and gentleness in treatment of patients in private institutions in England, namely the retreat associated with the Samuel Tube and the Brislington House. In those institutions, particularly important was not only the daily routine and the gentle therapy and the occupational therapy, but also the use of the open spaces, parks and gardens. And these two institutions became model places which were described in the writings of the doctors, in the letters, and were often visited by the doctors from all over Europe. And in 1808, there was the County Asylum Act, which provided public asylums in each county in England. But in 1818, there was also published a famous report of Jean-Etienne Escuriol in France, which began the beginning of the public, let's say, healthcare regarding mental health. Of course, from the contemporary perspective, the practices of that time were highly controversial, but that was a significant change to tell that people struggling with mental health diseases and mental health problems in general should have a secure place where they can feel safe and where they can come back to health. And in the next slide, you will see an outline, an evolution of the plans of the institutions which were established all across Europe throughout the 19th century. And over the time, they became more complex and they admitted a growing number of patients, sometimes reaching even the numbers like 1,000 people or 2,000 people in one institution. So at the end of the 19th century, so-called alienists, the doctors who led mental asylums, as those institutions were called at that time, they realized that the model of the old 19th century institution is a little bit outdated and is not about healing, but keeping people in custody. So they offered a different attitude and they turned to a system of so-called pavilion hospitals or so-called agricultural colonies. And in this slide, you will see two role examples, which were also the places where many doctors came to see how the institution was working. On the left-hand side, you see the Altscherbig. On the right-hand side, you see the Gauthausen. The Prussian state was the leader in establishing a mental health care institution, and there is a big number of those establishments in many Prussian provinces. So those two indicate the significant change that happened at 100 years later after psychiatry tried to be independent specialization. However, still, those institutions were a very large-scale investment. In 1907, there was opened the hospital on the outskirts of Vienna, the Am-Steinhof Hospital, which was a huge investment. And those investments were meant to be innovative, not only regarding their medical mission, but also all technical and building solutions, while they often remained, let's say, conservative regarding their architectural style. Am Steinhof is an exception with the church crowning the whole composition by Otto Wagner, and but it is often those institutions were often regarded as replicable and not interesting. However, it's not true. Those were the places of introduction of many technical innovations. And the tension between innovation and tradition is visible in the institutions, in the plan of the institutions built at the very beginning of the 20th century, which are often called the garden cities. The plans often are similar to the diagrams of Ebenezer Howard, while it's quite difficult to prove that their layout results from Howard's book, The Garden Cities, The Way of the Peaceful Reform, The Garden Cities of Tomorrow. However, they are often called the garden cities for the insane because the green spaces were very important. First of all, because they had to provide distant views, which were meant to be beneficial for the troubled mind of the ill. They provided so-called airing courts and exercise grounds for physical exercise, which was particularly important at this early stage of formation of those institutions in the 19th century, where they most often had airing courts for daily walks or some kind of physical exercise. They also were designed to provide some restoration, to provide some pleasant sensory stimulation, for example, by introduction of water features like fountains and ponds. As you can see here, these are the historic pictures from several of those institutions. Very important was also occupational therapy. On the left-hand slide, you've got the picture from the Krakow, the hospital on the outskirts of Krakow for the Kobierzyn, which was designed from 1907. And on the right-hand side, you've got the internal green court from the Asile de Bassins from France, which now houses a mental health center facility, not a hospital in the historic sense of the word. And many of those institutions were closed, and there was a large debate about the institutionalization about mental healthcare starting from 1960s, 1970s, because those institutions were meant to be ineffective, and there were many medical solutions that could, as the doctors now at that time said, bring people back to the community. So what was the result? Many of such big institutions, above all in the United Kingdom, were totally demolished or redeveloped or turned into housing estates. Many of those institutions, for example, in Italy, still stay empty, but almost the same number of those institutions still work as totally modern institutions in the old world, like the hospitals, like the mental health care centers in France, in Germany. For example, you've got here also the picture from Prague, from Bochnica, from the former Austro-Hungarian monarchy. You've got from the outskirts of Munich, the Egelsinghaus, which was the model for Kraków-Kobierzyn. You've got also the Kromeríž in the Czech Republic. You've got also still functioning the hospital at Am Steinhof in Vienna. And there is a question about challenges of those institutions still functioning in those old walls, which have to join their medical mission with their care for historic heritage. And I decided to look at the three aspects of those challenges staying in front of historic psychiatric hospitals. First of all, it is energy. At the time of the construction, the solutions implemented in those institutions were connected also to the energy production. It was the beginning, it was the era of steam and electricity, and the solutions of that time were regarded as very modern. Now there is a question of what is a modern solution for the 21st century, for the institutions functioning in the historic surrounding, because many of those institutions remain, although a little bit modified, still unchanged. I mean, they are big areas, not divided, not sold to particular different institutions, but still working as a one big multidisciplinary unit, providing many aspects of the care, providing mental health rehabilitation, sometimes also healthcare homes. And for example, here you've got the picture of the museum, which is in one of the Berlin historic hospitals. And on the right-hand side, you've got the picture, the aerial picture of the facility in Kobierzyń, which implemented the solar panels to support their energy consumption and production. The next issue is water. Water was an important factor at the 19th century connected with therapy. Therapy at that time included also the cruel practice, when we look at it now, of cold baths. And apart from that, it was very important from hygienic reasons. There were water towers apart from the decorative elements which were found in the garden. But now the question arises how to manage water in those contemporary facilities. What solutions can be implemented to make it more sustainable? Because water is still needed, because, for example, the large green spaces have to be maintained, and they need water as well. And the climate is changing. We've got still those many of those historic decorative elements which have to be somehow maintained. And the last thing is about green spaces. They had a very utility functions in history. They were agricultural and for occupational therapy, and it was a kind of economic necessity. Now it's forbidden to employ patients in providing work, but we've got a large number of different full spectrum of green therapies, where those large green grounds, parks, and gardens are really a good therapeutic environment. As well, they are biodiversity hotspots as historic spaces, as historic parks. And now the question arises about the amount of maintenance should be implemented, and the amount of modifications we should introduce, and do we have to over-maintain those spaces in order not to lose this biodiversity? And this is a question which arises in many historic parks and gardens, which is a challenge in the era of climate change, but which is particularly challenging here because those institutions have to often struggle with the burden of the cruel history during the Nazi times and so-called T4 action, which was connected with the extermination of the ill, and to maintain the medical mission according to the most actual knowledge with the right management and possible adjustment of heritage buildings to the contemporary needs, which includes, issues like the size of the patient's room, the things like elevators, the issues connected with accessibility of those buildings, the universal design, and being open not only for the patients, but to be a part of the community, because those institutions are not closed anymore in those sense. They were closed institutions 100 years ago. They see themselves as places where people can heal, and which have to have a connection to the close social neighborhood. So thank you for your attention, and feel free to ask me any questions in the Q&A session.
Thank you, Anna, very much for your presentation. Very specific topic, I would say, but at the same time, an important one, and also in the context of the pandemic, because we suffered a lot, and the question of psychiatry, of mental diseases, of this kind of suffering erased extremely. So thank you for this sustainable approach. As I noticed your message, how to safeguard the heritage, because also the development of the way of treating those who suffer mentally is an important, and especially I would say Central Europe has played an important role in this, not to mention Vienna and Trieste schools of psychiatry or psychoanalysis, and we have this built heritage of that time, and at the same time we have to take care of the patients and take care of ourselves as well. But going to a broader meaning of our panel, I'm extremely curious about your comments to such a notion. The protection of the heritage was at the very beginning tightly connected with the restoration. And for me, the prefix "re" is important, and is also getting more and more important, because now we have not only revitalization, but as you showed, reuse also comes as one of the ways or attitudes in safeguarding, protecting, and so on and so on. Let me provoke you. I think that all the activities prefixed with "re" will be the modern ways, the modern attitudes towards the heritage now. What do you think about that? Dominika, you as
Okay. I
a
thought that I could be the
economist.
first one. Yes, thank you. Well, actually, I have to go back a few years in the past when I was working at Dublin Institute of Technology. And what struck me over there when we spoke about built environment and also regeneration, I heard a very specific phrase that in the global scale, only 2% are new adjustments or new buildings added to the building stock each year. So the problem and also the challenge for us for the future lies in those 98%. When you look at the structure and the history of European cities, we have to say that there is heritage, but also buildings which are not protected, but they are part of this intangible heritage. It means that there are memories, specific places, and they have importance for local communities. And what we need to focus is how to bring those buildings, which are often in very bad technical shape, back to the community, not only by regeneration projects, which are mostly as you said, modernization, and not by letting them as a commercial properties, but somehow like social investments, or I would say impact investments. And this is the challenge which we have for the future, and especially in European cities. So a lot of things ahead for us. And what we need to understand that there's this special power in social basically actors, in NGOs, in local communities, but also in neighborhoods. By regeneration, we are also stricken by the problem of gentrification. This is a large problem, and it creates a social exclusion for many citizens. And like using the example of Piekarnia, what it could be and what it shouldn't be, we want to basically use it as a showcase of the possible and good example how to use those kind of properties in different way. Because in many cases nowadays we see beautiful regeneration, or we see large investment companies, or maybe chain stores, chain coffee shops coming in, but they're for specific audience. What we are missing are community centers, maker spaces, and spaces for micro and small entrepreneurs who often cannot afford to rent entire place, but would like to work in groups. I know that COVID pandemic showed us like how fragile we are, and actually in case of Piekarnia, this was the same thing. Almost 2 years ago, there was a new tenant for Piekarnia, and basically she came because that was a lady. She came with high hopes, and we were cooperating with her, giving her some hints, but she had a great social program. Before she started her activities, she needed to make some repairs and to adjust the building to be safe for the users. Unfortunately, during the pandemic, she wasn't able to foresee how many customers could come and when, and she dropped back from the tenant list. And right now, the bakery is empty again. So those are the real problems, of the empty spaces, which are left for many years and could be used by the communities.
Thank you, Dominika, for mentioning social power. This is something really important. 30 years after the collapse of communism, we were extremely open to invisible hand of the market economy, yeah? And this invisible hand is easily visible, for example, on the Maciej's presentation, where Villa Rustica is not Rustica anymore. So this is a real, as you mentioned, a real challenge how to manage with those forces. This is also something which was measured or searched by Fariba in the example of Amsterdam. What might be the social citizens' impact into the built environment, into the city? This is how I understand your message. Would you like to share any other comments, or do you have any questions? Let me check. There is no questions in our chat. I don't know whether you want to share anything, Anna.
Yes, I would say that it's the social function is very important in many aspects, in many types of, let's say, heritage, in many scales, because I was some time ago investigating the NGO's involvement in rehabilitation of old fortifications in Poland. And there is a problem with some regulations and about tenements and about taking care for particular places, about the legal regulations in which the owners, I mean the public owners, let use the non-governmental organizations the heritage object and the time, for example, they give the object under care, and it's often too short to begin a good project, to make it public, to involve people, and to later on push it forward and then evaluate it. If you give a place, for example, for 2 years for an NGO, they are unable to plan the budget, and that's the problem in many places. For example, in many heritage objects in Krakow, and this is discouraging people from taking care of the non-governmental organizations. And what I find very important is that people love to engage in historic places, in places that tell the story, that are attractive for them, if they have the chance to let them know. If the place is unknown, it is unnoticed. And the same rule applies to those old mental health care facilities. When they open the doors and let the neighborhood in, for example, they open the gates and they allow people go for jogging all around the pavilion. It's the perception of those areas totally changes. People begin to ask what's happening there, what's going to be here. For example, Kobierzyn encouraged an artist. There is an atelier and a magazine of works of Józef Kędziora, the balancing figures there. And well, it is a problem for many places, but it is something which brings optimism and brings people and attracts them, and that shows the future direction, the good direction.
Thank you. Any other comments of yours, Fariba? Yes.
I hope there is no sound coming, because there is a stadium near where I reside, and they usually have motorcycle races, and there is a lot of sound pollution. But regarding the heritage and the role of the people, I wanted to add something else. The study shows that heritage has a direct impact on the feeling of belonging and feeling good in the people of a neighborhood, and how they feel about their identity and their connection. And I've been living in Prague for more than a year now, and before that I was living in Budapest. And I noticed that there are many buildings that are historic, but because of their private ownership, the municipality can't renovate them, and they don't create a good feeling in the passerbys and the people who live in those neighborhoods. And I think the urban fabric in many post-Soviet capitals and cities is a very special fabric, which makes the Central European cities special in their urban nature. And there should be ways for municipalities to take care of those buildings, to make the appearance of the city better, because some of these buildings need attention, and because they have private ownership, the municipality can't do anything about it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. A kind of similar note was sent us by Professor Ewa Chojecka, related to a broader matter, the objects which are distinguished internationally for example, by UNESCO, like Muzeum in Tarnowskie Góry? Do we make the most of it by promoting them within local self-governments? That is also, I guess, a challenge. Thank you, Fariba, for recalling the sense of belonging. It was also something which was very much related to the heritage activity during yesterday's session. So again, intangible values as the factors of the change. If you allow me to conclude our session, if there is no other comments, I would like to thank you very, very much for the optimistic message which comes out of this session, I guess, anyway. Highly informative, highly illuminating, but most of all, optimistic in my opinion. Dominika, Fariba, Anna, Maciej, thank you very much. Thank you, our audience, and I hope to see you all tomorrow for the third part of the urban renewal session. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you for presenting the session.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.